A Blackhawks top forward has been in the news lately for a potential trade option come the trade deadline, but Kyle Davidson might not be willing to make that move. We'll discuss why in this video, but before we get into all of that, we notice that 83% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel, so if you're looking for a spot to get all your Blackhawks news, you're in the right spot. Make sure to stay a while, sub to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the major news. But like I said, Tyler Johnson has been in the name. He's been the name that has been in the trade rumors as of late, and one team that was won't be two, to be the Boston Bruins. He's been drawing a lot of interest lately from many teams, but one team we've been seeing repetitive lately has been the Boston Bruins. And this comes from just one tweet here that we've seen. Boston Hockey Now. Could the Blackhawks center Tyler Johnson become an option for the Bruins on the trade market? Although I think Tyler Johnson would be a fit on many teams around the NHL, Kyle Davidson might not be willing to make that move. And this has come from a lot of Blackhawks reporters, simply saying that the Blackhawks will likely be less active in the NHL trade market this winter than in past years. We'll be keeping some guys maybe in years past we would have considered to move along, Kyle Davidson said. And I have a few more screenshots here from an article, but let's just discuss the possibility of it happening first. Nick, what do you think about a Tyler Johnson-style player on Boston, and what kind of return do you think the Blackhawks would get for something like this? Because obviously they don't need any players right now, so it'd be prospects or picks, but what do you think about a potential move away from Tyler Johnson for the Blackhawks?
Yeah, well, I think there would have to be obviously like at least probably a third or fourth round pick. I'm not sure if Tyler Johnson gets you more than that at this point of his career. He is a very versatile guy though. Being a short guy, like undrafted or whatever, like he is always like fighting with a chip on his shoulder though. Like he hasn't been a guy that everything was handed to him. Like he had to fight his way into the league after not being drafted, and he played really well with Tampa Bay for a number of years. Has a couple of Stanley Cups, went to a final back in 2015 against the Blackhawks, in which they lost. But he's been there. He's a guy that's been up and down the lineup. I'm pretty sure he's been on the fourth line, third line, second line, and even first line in Tampa Bay. He's probably played all over the lineup for the Blackhawks this year. I'm not even sure where at this point, because they have everybody, like we said in previous videos, playing everywhere every different night. You know what I mean? The only guy that's constant on that first line is Connor Bedard. So with Tyler Johnson, I think he's a guy that's very versatile, can play anywhere. And yeah, the Bruins would be lucky to have a guy like that in the bottom six, and maybe you can move him around on the bottom two lines there.
Yep, he is on the final year of his deal, and he's currently making $5 million. So if a trade does occur, you would have to assume he'd be a 50% retention for $2.5 million for wherever he goes. Although, like we said, Kyle Davidson, he's kind of in an odd position, has an odd stance on this season's trade deadline, and we're going to go into it here in a few, screenshots from the article that Ben Pope posted from the tweet earlier. This is the one where he said, and while the Blackhawks have a number of pending UFAs, Davidson might not execute many trades, even small ones, over the next 3 months. He says, we have a wealth of assets that puts us in a position where we don't need to go and trade guys to build up our base of draft picks and prospects. Now, in a sense, I do understand that, you can't have too many because you could be in you could have a very big problem with your contracts in a few years. But why would you let a UFA walk knowing you could get something in exchange from, like Nick, like you said, if it was Tyler Johnson in this case, it'd be a third or a fourth maybe. But a third and a fourth is nothing to, let it blow away in the wind. That's a solid draft pick. We've seen players, one name that comes to mind, Kirill Kaprizov, taken in the 5th round. There's a lot of good players that can be found in these mid-tier rounds from 3 to 5. So I really don't understand Kyle Davidson's stance on, letting these guys walk. But Nick, I know you had some ideas about this. So what do you think about this mindset that Kyle Davidson is right now of not needing any more prospects or picks?
I think he's either really stupid or, more likely than that, he's lying. He's just straight up lying because he wants to up the other team's offers to him for those players that are there. Like other teams are going to see that now and either think what I'm thinking, that he's lying, or they're going to say, oh, well, I've got to up my offer. Like, I've got to up my offer from a 5th round pick to a 4th or a 3rd or even a 2nd in some cases. Like, I mean, we've seen Brennan Hagel get 2 firsts at one point when he was traded to Tampa Bay. So there's obviously some mind games going on there with Kyle Davidson. He's trying to get other teams to. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing. There's no way that he's that dumb. Like, he's not he's not just going to let a UFA stay on the team and just walk for nothing. Like, that's probably, as a GM, that's one of the stupidest things you could possibly do. So I think he's just lying about it. He's just trying to get, which is a smart thing, because you never know. Like, he could just keep on saying no until they up the offer to what he wants. I mean, like, some team is going to want Tyler Johnson bad enough, or some team is going to want, like, even a player that plays on the fourth line all the time. Like, there's a team that probably needs some depth like that, right? So they might offer a second-round pick for a fourth-line guy. You know what I mean? Which is not likely, but it could happen now that they think Kyle Davidson's not trying to make any moves that he doesn't have to make.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. I think Kyle Davidson, although he's made a few moves that are a bit questionable in his time, I think he's smart enough not to do, like, what you said in let them walk. There's literally no point in doing so. You know, there are teams, if you go to look at all 31 other teams apart from the Blackhawks and ask them, do you want Tyler Johnson? I can guarantee you at least 3 or 4 of them will say yes. That way, whether it's a 7th-round pick, that's still a draft pick. But obviously they probably wouldn't do it in that situation where Tyler Johnson is not worth a 7th-round pick. He's better than that, but you can get something for pretty much anybody on this team. Now, there are a lot of free agents on this team, which I'm going to touch on a bit later. But like you said, Kyle Davidson, I think, is trying to up the offer. I don't think there's nothing to lose in this at all. You know, he kind of has to up the offer. There's no point in not. He's done what he can, and I think there's enough players to, spread the wealth, I guess you could say. They want to keep some, maybe re-sign a few. There's many that they can get rid of. And I understand there are some that you will let walk. You know, there are some people that just nobody wants. I can think of a few for you, Nick, and Jonathan Drouin and Mike Hoffman, but but you know, it's in that scenario where people want at least something from someone, you know, in that situation. But the free agents as well, there is a lot of RFAs. This is more from Davidson. The fact the Blackhawks don't anticipate trading many of their pending free agents doesn't mean they plan to re-sign most or all of them instead. They have to be selective about which guys they bring back. After all, the majority of the entire roster are all on expiring contracts at the moment. In addition to the aforementioned UFAs, the list of pending restricted free agents includes Lucas Reichel, Taylor Radish, Mackenzie Entwistle, Reese Johnson, Joey Anderson, Cole Gutman, Boris Kachuk, plus defenseman Alex Vlasic, Isaac Phillips, Louis Crevier, and Philip Roos. So you can see they have a lot of stuff to do this offseason. I understand Davidson not wanting too much stuff to go under the contract scenario of things, so get rid of some UFAs. You know, it obviously won't hurt, and I think there are some players like they won't get rid of. I think Nick Foligno's, I think he's here till retirement. I can see him re-signing and becoming captain next year, or becoming, some kind of unnamed captain if they decide not to give him the C. So there are moves that they have the opportunity to do, and I think that Kyle Davidson, I think he's lying. I think you're right, Nick. I think, to keep it simple, I think he's lying.
Yeah, well, he has to be, because, like I said, it's one of the stupidest things you can do. And, like, saying you have a wealth of assets, it may be true right now, but you could go down the road, like, in 3 or 4 years and let's just say, for argument's sake, you have 10 prospects you think will end up making the NHL that'll be regulars in your lineup. Like, for the Blackhawks, I'd have to look at it and see how many that they think. But say you have 10. What if 8 or 9 of those guys don't work out? What happens then? You had your wealth of assets and you let UFAs walk that you could have got picks for, that could have been guys that did turn out. Or maybe they don't. Like, you don't know. You have to maximize your assets, especially as a GM going into a rebuild. Is the most important time. Like, obviously they're in the middle of a rebuild now, but you have to maximize the assets that you have. It's always a good thing to have assets, but you need to maximize it when you have guys that are going to walk and you're not going to get anything for them, especially like Tyler Johnson. That's a really high selling point on him, is that he's always playing with a chip on his shoulder. He scored a few Stanley Cup final goals, even when he was on the fourth line against Montreal that year when they won in 5 games. Tyler Johnson scored a couple of goals in that series. He scored a couple of goals in that playoffs. Like, it was a guy that played with a chip on his shoulder. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He's played up and down the lineup. You have to get rid of a guy like that. It has to happen for Chicago.
There's no point in letting him walk, especially with the experience he has, like you said. Teams want that. You know, I can think of like at least 15 teams that want someone, Stanley Cup winner, experience on every line, leader in the dressing room, all types of things like that. At 33 years old, he's not even that old. If you sign him to like maybe a 1-2 year extension, even a 3 year, that's not something you'll let walk. So we'll be keeping an eye on the Tyler Johnson situation, but not just Tyler Johnson, the whole Kyle Davidson not wanting to trade anybody situation. We'll be keeping an eye on that because this is a huge selling point for the Blackhawks. If they are lying, if they're not, I really don't know what they're doing, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. And, the trade deadline's coming soon, but we got lots of time before that yet. So make sure to sub to the channel if you don't want to miss out on any of this type of news. We post it pretty much daily, so make sure to stick around, sub to the channel. But that's all we got. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.